As the Surry County Board of Elections, we have a duty to avoid conflicts or appearances of conflicts of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict or interest of any appearance of conflict which with respect to any matters coming before this board today? If so, please identify the conflict or appearance or conflict and refrain from any participation in the particular matter. Meeting will come to order. This is August the 10th, 2023. Time is 10:06 a.m. I call this hearing of the Surry County Board of Elections to order. I'm Dwayne Carter, Chairman. To my left, Drew Poindexter, the Secretary of the Board. Clark Comer is on the end, board member. To my right is Barbara Cave, also Jimmy Yokel, board member. Now, I do note that we have a full board, we have a quorum. Our Director, Michelle Huff, is seated to my right. Deputy Director Sidney Edsall Romaine is in the room. Mr. Mark Payne, Surry County Board of Elections Attorney, is also present to my right. A stenographer, transcriptionist from Husby Connect Global Litigation is online, as proceedings of this hearing are being transcribed and audio video recorded for North Carolina regulation requirements. I'll now have the attorney speak to the procedure required in this matter. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. Good morning. Morning. This is the second quasi judicial matter that the new members have seen. The other members have seen a quasi judicial before, so it seemed like it would be appropriate to sort of introduce what the procedure is and what the requirements are of the board in order to make its finding. First of all, I'd say quasi judicial is a slightly different from the more administrative duties that this board usually has. You're acting, excuse me, you're acting in the capacity as judges. And if the technical term is quasi judicial, but basically you're judicial. You're acting exactly as a judge, which means matters that you have to, the evidence that you have to take in has to be done under oath. So anybody that wants to speak and be a witness will be sworn in. This is, and the matter in front of you, you're a little bit familiar with, because the first requirement is to determine is the probable cause hearing, which you had last month. It's based on the voter challenge form, which you have in front of you in your package. And the one unusual thing about that package is under the requirements, the procedural requirements, that challenge is to be done in the form of a challenge from the chair. And so it does make this a slightly more unusual procedure than you sometimes see, because the chair is the petitioner, and the chair is also potentially a witness in this matter. The issue that was placed in front of you last time and is in front of you this time is a voter challenge, whether or not the voter, Mr. Silva, is eligible to vote based on 163.85 C5. And that reads, such challenge may be made only for one of the following reasons. Number 5 is that the person has been judged guilty of a felony and is eligible to vote, is ineligible to vote under 163-55-2. And that refers you to once and both 163-85, 163-86, and 163-55, I think, are in the package in front of you. 163-55 talks about qualifications to vote, and it says a person is ineligible to vote if they've been adjudged guilty of a felony against this state or the United States, or adjudged guilty of a felony in another state that would be a felony if it was committed in this state, unless that person shall be first restored to the rights of citizenship in the manner prescribed by law. Every state, and that last part needs some explanation. Restored to your, in North Carolina, and every state's a little bit different. In North Carolina, you are restored to rights of citizenship when you have completed your sentence and any conditions thereof, such as parole, probation, and those sorts of things. So if you are done with your sentence or and have completed your parole or probation or any other conditions of sentencing, if you're completely done with all of those, then your citizenship is restored, or if you're pardoned. So those are the two circumstances. Completed all your sentence, including conditions, or pardoned. That's, and basically, that's what the law presents is the question in front of you is, does the challenged voter fall into the category of ineligible to vote or eligible to vote? The burden of proof when you folks is not it's more like a civil burden, which is more likely than not. It is not beyond a reasonable doubt. It is more likely than not. So if you think that's the case, then that's the way you should vote. I think that explains the process, the procedure. I think you guys are pretty much familiar with anybody that's going to speak needs to be sworn in. There'll be testimony if necessary. There can be cross examination. All of you can ask questions of any witness. And let me see if I've hit all of the categories that you guys need to hear. I think that's it. And of course, I'm happy to answer any questions on the law procedure as you move forward. And I will hand it back to the chair.
Thank you, Counselor. Board members, please keep an open mind to the facts presented here this morning. I note that the challenged voter, Mr. James E. Silva Jr., is present. Do you by chance have counsel representing you, or do you have affidavits from anyone representing you that you bring forth as far as affidavits or such?
No, sir.
Okay. Mr. Silver, do you have any questions prior to presenting this case this morning? Anything that Attorney Payne might have said, or just questions that's not testimony?
No, I appreciate going through that, the law and the rules here. Thank you.
Thank you. General Statute 163-86, Section C also requires that the challenger and challenged voter be sworn as to an oath set out by the statute. Secretary Poindexter, I'll ask you to swear me in and then the challenged voter in, please.
You might be a witness too for
Okay.
some of the documentation.
Go over here.
Got the Bible here.
Can I stand here?
Yes.
And you can all three
All
do it
three
at
do
one
it?
time if you want
At
to.
one time? or-
Yeah.
It's a different child, it's a different oath.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, sometimes it's easier to do it all at once, not all the time, so.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the Surry County Board of Elections for this hearing, wherein Board of Elections Chairman Dwayne Carter is challenger and James E. Silva Jr. is the challenge voter in the Surry County, shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
I do. Like to swear,
Yes.
swear him.
Yes, Mr. Silva. You swear or affirm that the statements and information that you shall give in this hearing with respect to your identity and qualifications to be registered and to vote shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God?
Yes, sir, I do.
Will the Chairman Carter please proceed?
Thank you. In early 2022, a North Carolina Superior Court judge determined that denying voting rights to people serving their felony sentences outside of jail or prison violated their North Carolina state constitutional rights. Because of this, on July 27th, 2022, a window was opened for individuals serving felony sentence that was not in jail or prison, that they could register and vote. An individual would had to have had be a resident of North Carolina for at least 30 days prior to an election, be a U.S. citizen, and be at least 18 years old by the next general election to register. That decision was appealed, and the North Carolina Court of Appeals ordered that while the case was on appeal, the Superior Court's judgment would continue and go into effect, and the voter registration of felons could proceed and continue. The North Carolina Supreme Court took that appeal and overturned the lower court ruling on April 28th, 2023, meaning any individual convicted of a felony could no longer register or vote if already registered until their sentence is complete, including any periods of probation, post-release supervision, parole, or a full pardon. Within that 9 months period, Mr. James E. Silva Jr. registered to vote September the 20th, 2022 at the North Carolina Division of Motor Vehicles office. Mr. Silva also voted in person at Mount Airy Precinct 5 on November the 8th, 2022, exercising his right to vote at that time. Thus, that window opened for registration of felons was then closed. Felons that may have registered during that 9-month period of time was ordered to be removed from North Carolina voter rolls. As a result of the Supreme Court ruling, the State Board of Elections received lists of people currently registered serving felony sentences from North Carolina Department of Adult Correction and U.S. Department of Justice. They sent those lists to all county boards of elections to cancel the registrations of anyone who was now ineligible with a notice of removal due to felony conviction. The voter had the right to object to removal within 30 days of that notice sent by the County Board of Elections. That notice was sent to Mr. Silva dated June 6, 2023. A timely objection dated June 10th, 2023 was received by the elections office stating his objection to removal with reasons given. With Mr. Silva's objection to removal, a registration challenge was initiated. I, by order of the State Board of Elections, was designated to be the challenger. A preliminary hearing was held July the 18th, 2023 with this board, with probable cause found to hold a full challenge hearing scheduled August 10th, 2023. The felon list for removal received by the Surry County Board of Elections sent from the State Board of Elections contained Mr. Silva's name and Surry County address that matched Mr. Silva's voter registration information. It also contained, or it also had the Department of Corrections placement as parole and the Department of Corrections file number, along with his birth and conviction date. Thank you.
And if any board member wants to ask any questions, they can at this time.
Mr. Silva, thank you again for wanting to be part of the voting public.
Thank you.
I think we want everybody to have a passion for the right to vote.
Yes, sir.
Are you aware that North Carolina is one of 48 states that ban felons from voting?
I actually did not know, quite honestly. I appreciate both these gentlemen kind of bringing me up to speed, if I may say it that way.
I didn't either.
I had dated information, to be honest. I was only back till 2022. I was unaware of the process and what the laws are. When I transferred from Massachusetts, I've been on parole for almost 25, between 25 and 30 years. We get our rights back as soon as you're on parole. About a year, it was a year ago, the other day, my wife and I drove through Mount Airy, and we loved it, and we wanted to get a quieter, better opportunity, and that's why we moved here. And I just kind of was living my life the way I thought I should, and so on, and figured I'd go or register, I'd vote, and do all that. And, when I saw the message, I was a little hurt and surprised, they kind of feel like you're stepping back a little bit. You made all this progress. And I appealed it based on that. I was like, hey, I don't know why I'm losing my rights. So I researched it and I found the case laws.
Mr. Silva, I hate to interrupt you. I really do.
Yes, sir.
But board, are there any questions for me on my testimony? Please, I do apologize for interrupting, but if there are not any questions for me, Mr. Silva can come up, make his testimony, and then we can have questions to him.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Sorry.
And you can testify from.
Yeah.
And the only reason is it's a little easier for it to get picked up by the
For
transcript.
the, yeah, reporter.
This is, will the challenge voter, Mr. Silva, proceed with your evidence?
To be honest, as I mentioned, I didn't really know the laws. I'm only learning it now. I'm trying to research it and Google will only give you so much information, really, without case law or anything. The latest thing I saw was CIS versus Moore, or I think that's the original case or something to that effect. And it was March and April. There was some statement of whatever, and I didn't know this recently is 2023. So the law is the law. I understand it. I don't know if there's the ability to appeal that, based on any other merit or anything, the idea that I still am, I still have, you know, if I went back to Massachusetts, I can vote. I don't know if that's allowed or whatever, or just, I really don't know. That's why I'm here. Kind of looking at you guys. If that's the law, then what can we do? Is there anything we can do, or do we wait for the courts to settle this out? I don't know. So,
And my only point of asking the question is that I myself did not realize that.
Yeah.
There are 48 out of 50 states
yeah,
that ban felons from voting.
yeah,
So it's, you know, it obviously is in the greater majority of states.
yeah,
Massachusetts must be one or two.
yeah,
So,
yeah, and
So, the law is the law, as you
Yep.
said.
yeah,
There's a process that is available to go through that and be reinstated. How long that would take?
there is a process.
If, do I understand your testimony that you're still on parole?
So in 1970, I'll give you a little background if I may. In 1979, as a 17-year-old boy, I was convicted of a crime. In Massachusetts, they have the structure of sentences and the types of paroles on it. I'm what's called a lifetime parole. There is a process to get off of it. I'm in that process now. It's a yearly review, submit it, you go through your local PO and all this stuff, and then it goes up to a board. They have a board like yourself where they'll sit on and vote. Every year I put through that process, so.
During this hearing, this board can only make a determination as your eligibility to vote as it stands right now. After their hearing's over, I'd like to talk to you because I do think you do have a few options that might be worth exploring,
Okay,
but
thank you.
can't do that in the context of this hearing.
I appreciate
Mr.
that.
Still, could you speak louder? Mr. Comer's have a problem.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's my fault. I don't hear very well. Tell me again what you were saying. You were convicted when you were 17.
17, when I was 17 years old, I committed a crime. I confessed to the crime, this process, I was convicted. And they have a structure of it. The sentence I was given, someone died in the case. There was a larceny of a motor vehicle. They gave me what's called life with parole. You technically do 15 years. And you work through your Department of Corrections process, and then you're free. You go out as long as you follow the rules, whatever the rules are for parole. You follow those rules and you should be okay, you know. I've been doing that for 25 plus years. I'm pretty successful. I've educated and so on, and got the opportunity to move down here, and we loved it. We said, oh, let's finish our life down here. You know, my wife, I have kids, I have 4 kids, and you know, that was hoping to just go on as we could. So, yeah.
Mr. Payne, does the nature of the crime have any bearing whatsoever on this?
The only to the extent of if the crime that happened when he was 17, if it occurred in North Carolina, would it also be a felony? And I think you guys have to assume that unless he wants to talk about the crime itself, and you guys got to make that calculation. But that's the only consideration is if that crime occurred in North Carolina, would it also be a felony?
So that the crime occurred in another state, then the nature of the crime is irrelevant here in our calculation.
Right. If it's a felony, that's the only consideration that the North Carolina law says, if it's a felony or would be a felony here. And you can testify to that if you want to.
It would
or
be a
not.
felony. I mean, a
It
felony
would
is
be
a felony
here.
Yeah, sad to
Okay.
say, yeah.
And so yeah, that's.
I will not ask you about the specifics of the crime then, if you are saying that the crime would have been a felony here in North Carolina as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can I ask you, the status of your probation or parole now?
Uh, I have a parole officer here in Mount Airy, and, I follow the process, whatever it is, whatever
Right.
the requirements.
And
are.
it's just a yearly thing for,
Yeah, you have, so it's a little different because I'm an out-of-state felon on top of it. I've never technically been convicted of a felony here. So my process is, if I could say it that lighter. Typically, I think the way they do it down here, and I'm not 100% sure, I think there's go in every 2 weeks or so, you get a whole bunch of testing and questions and all this stuff, which is the same in a lot of other states as well.
right,
Because I wasn't convicted here, mine's an online process. I also, one thing that's different and tougher down here in Massachusetts, we don't pay any fees for parole. I pay a $40 monthly fee to be on parole in North Carolina.
Wow.
So,
Now, I was a parole officer
yes, sir.
in my former life,
Yes, sir.
and did you go through the interstate compact?
Yeah, interstate compact, I transferred it. So I have 3 parole officers technically. I have my Massachusetts Region 8 guy. I'm an interstate guy, and I have my local, I have a girl down here. I have a local office.
I have never heard of a parole lasting for 40 years.
In Massachusetts, they're one of the few states that still do that. So I won't get off parole until I die.
Really?
Yes, sir.
But you continue to have to pay supervision fees. Did they administer drug tests?
Till the day I die.
Did you don't do any community service?
No, sir. I'm actually, so I do community service. I'm the lead volunteer for Prison Fellowship, Chuck Colson's Prison Fellowship Program in the New England area. I cover 5 states there, and I got special permission from the governor down here I go into one prison in North Carolina, because another law down here that I was devastated by. I go into any prison, maximum security, I believe. I go in and I talk to these guys. There's a 1-year curriculum where I help the guys do change management, conflict resolution, and it's a faith-based program as well. I could go into maximum security in the New England states. I come down here and I'm not allowed. And the reason why is because I'm on parole. When you're on parole, you're not allowed to go into prison. And so the warden at Davidson Correctional Facility, is a Christian gentleman as well. He wrote to whoever it was, the powers that be. It took us about 6 months. So I currently go into every Monday night, 2 hours. I go to Davidson Correctional Facility and I counsel them in there.
Because it's technically a violation of your parole if you associate with any
Exactly right. And I'm
other offender.
probably the worst guy in their mind. I'm probably the worst guy that you want going to a prison because I'm a felon. I might coerce with them, bring in drugs or whatever. But, what I did was I had my parole officers, I had church people, you name it, right? Like police officers. I have a lot of people that, over the years support me.
Who's your officer in that area?
Surry, Charlotte, I have there, Martlet.
Geyer?
Yeah, she's brand new. She just started. I just got her.
I wouldn't know her name.
And then Terry, it's right out of the main office there.
Yeah, behind the
Terry
Behind-
McCann.
Arby's
McCann.
back there.
Yeah. Yeah, Terry, that's right.
McCann.
Oh, he's super.
He's the supervisor.
Yes.
He's the first guy I met when I walked down here. So it's so funny because in Massachusetts, I travel a lot. I travel the United States quite a bit. I've earned that privilege. I travel for business, I travel for prison fellowship, and then family. So in Massachusetts, I have to have what they call a travel permit. Anytime I go somewhere, I get special permission and I have to carry that on. And then ironically, wherever I go, I have to find a parole officer in that state and kind of turn myself in. And most places don't even know what to do with it. When I walk in, they're like, okay, so what do you want from us? Like, I need you to sign this piece of paper, please, and validate that I was here. And it ends up becoming a dialogue where I got to give him my number, my parole officer's number, and they have a little dialogue. In the meantime, sometimes I could sit in a prison cell. I'm on family vacation, I'm back in a prison cell because that whole interchange, and that whole process. I do that here too. I travel and so on. Here, the program's a little bit better, I would say. It's better than Massachusetts. But those are some of the, so those are the things I have to deal with, you make it work.
Are there any questions, other questions from the board to Mr. Silva? If not, Mr. Silva, if you would give sort of as a closing argument to the board of how we should rule in this case from you on your side as the challenger.
If I had to go by the law is the law. The law says I don't have the right. There's nothing you can do. Maybe there's a process we can go through here.
After this hearing, I'd like to talk to you that, no promises, but I want to talk to you.
I think your hands are tied, so that's,
Anything else?
no, sir.
Thank
I'd
you.
just like to say something, Chairman. I commend you for wanting to vote.
Thank you.
As my closing argument, the right to vote is a precious and priceless right. And in North Carolina, that window with a bright light came through for 9 months. However, a higher court did close that window and caused this chain of events, bringing us to here this day to technically take away what you signed up for at a North Carolina Division of Motor Vehicle. And I'm honestly to tell you with your circumstance, I hate that we're going to have to take a vote, whichever way that vote will be. I don't know, but I hate it come to this. I do know that right to vote that was closed in the North Carolina Supreme Court ruled that way. I know that there are lawsuits right now that has taken that matter up from the North Carolina Supreme Court and may come and overturn it sometime in the future. That window may open again. But as I presented, we do have what is before us, what is the law now that has just occurred. So I have no further argument or closing argument to that.
I just one last question. Is there any form of restitution you're paying to anyone in Massachusetts, anyone any longer?
No, sir. Zero.
Board, we've heard the evidence this morning. It is time for us to deliberate. Are there comments and discussion by the board?
Yes, it sickens me that we're going to have to do what I'm afraid we're going to have to do. That would be my comment. I mean, unless Mr. Payne can explain to me that we have some option other than to follow the law.
And that's not a sentence you're ever going to hear from me. So
Say there again, Mr. Payne.
and you're never going to hear the sentence from me that you've got an option other than following the law. So
Yeah, well, if there's not an option to do something other than to follow the law. Hearing
Are there any further discussion or such before I ask for a motion?
It does make me sick.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that having to follow by the law, that we must do our duty and take Mr. Silva off the voting rolls at this time. Motion.
Thank you. Is there a second to that? We have a second. Mr. Yockley. Any further discussion from the motion or the second? If not, I'll ask for a vote by voice. Starting at my far left. Mr. Comer and Mr. Poindexter is aye. Ms. Cave. Yep. The motion has been carried. Director Huck. You will cancel and remove Mr. James E. Silva Jr. from the voter registration list per General Statute 163-90.2. Paragraph A. Have Attorney Payne prepare a written order to be sent to the North Carolina State Board of Elections and retain a copy for this office's record. I will read General Statute 163-90.2, paragraphs A and C. Action when challenge sustained. A. When any challenge is sustained for any cause listed under General Statute 163-85, paragraph C, the board shall cancel or correct the voter registration of the voter. The board shall maintain record for at least 6 months and during the pendency of any appeal. C, a decision by a county board of elections on any challenge made under the provisions of this article shall be appealable to the Superior Court of the county, in which the offices of those that are located by the board that are located within 10 days. Only those persons against whom a challenge is sustained or persons who have made a challenge which is overruled shall have standing to file such appeal. Is there anything further to come before this challenge hearing?
Yes, sir.
The purpose of this voter challenge hearing being accomplished, I declare this hearing adjourned. Sine die.